Good evening, everyone, and welcome. It's W.R. Frady here, and welcome back to the Fireside. This week's episode, we're going to take a little trip back to Lacy Road. Lacy Road is a place that began all the stories that we have come to know as the legends of Lacy Road. Just to give a good background on it, Lacy Road is the home where I grew up and experienced many things in that home during that time. So, tonight's stories will come from the legends of Lacy Road. But before we jump in, I would first like to make a few announcements in case you didn't hear the last time, or you're just now tuning in. Legends of Lacy Road Volume 1 has been postponed for now. It's still in the works. I would love to have gotten it ready for the Halloween season. Hopefully I still may, but I would prefer to have a quality product, a quality collection of these stories for you to enjoy time and time again. As I've said before, for me, the Legends of Lacy Road are not just my life and the lives of those who lived in that home and the family of those who lived in that home. Lacy Road, the Legends of Lacy Road are also my scary stories that I grew up living, and inspired me and made me into the writer that I have become and strive to be. Also, if you have the chance, if you haven't checked it out or you've not heard about it yet, the Ebonstone Tower is the home of all things W.R. Frady, is now up, running, and live. It is the home of The Vampire Killer, Legends of Lacy Road, and Tales for the Fireside. It is also the home of the Wise Oak and Whispery Hollow and the Lovelady Township. So there are plenty of stories and things to go check out there. Also, don't forget to check out the Cantankerous Cauldron, as you never know what might be in the works and coming up for W.R. Frady and Friends. Wolf Moon Studios also details other projects that I'm a part of, and will also be the art gallery and such for not only my works, but I hope to soon have commissioned art from some of my good friends who are also professional artists up there to go with the themes of my stories and such. And in that, be sure to check out theebonstonetower.com. The Ebonstone Tower, again, is the home of all things W.R. Frady. And without further ado, let's jump into tonight's first story. Tonight's first story is But It Wasn't Me. It was a normal Friday evening at the Frady house, if there could be such. Randy had just come in from school. He threw his books down by his bed, raced in, poured a glass of Sundrop, went into his bedroom, and turned on the Nintendo. It was the weekend, and so there was games to play, fun to be had, adventures to go on. Well, as the game continued to play, soon Randy's family come home. Everyone seemed to filter in from school, from work, and so on. The house began to have its usual bustle. And eventually the phone rang. Now, Randy was in the middle of battling death, the Grim Reaper, in the bowels of Brahm's mansion. And he was completely enraptured in his game of Simon's Quest. When a voice come from the kitchen. Randy, you have a phone call. So Randy got up, went in, picked up the phone, and it was Nathan on the other line. Hey, Rambo, how's it going, bro? Not much, man. You wanna... And they did talk for a little while, and soon it was all decided that Nathan was coming to stay over for the night. And, it was going to be a weekend of games and movies and just a lot of fun. So, once Randy was off the phone, he went back in and continued his battle with the Grim Reaper. Well, by the time Nathan arrived, Randy had done passed through the game Simon's Quest and was hacking his way through Wizards and Warriors when the alarm that was the chorus of dogs outside announced his friend's arrival. Randy met him in the living room, and they walked up, shook hands, began talking, and carried on as Randy directed him back to the bedroom where he had been playing the games. And Randy spied that a couple of golden cartridges and another cartridge in his hand, and automatically knew that he had brought the Zelda games and a couple, and so we had went back in and continued on throughout the game, talking, and as we took turns, as Randy and Nathan took turns playing the game, Randy's mom called up. We're calling in pizza. We're going to go get it. You want a ride to go get it? So the two just kind of chatted amongst each other. I mean, the pizza was always a classic favorite, especially when Randy had company. And Randy looked at it and said, hey, maybe we can go by and check out, see what kind of movies they got, maybe some other games and stuff. All right. So Nathan was in the middle of duking it out on Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and they continued to play on through the game. Well, soon the voice Randy's mom kind of called by and said, if you're going, I'm going to get the pizza if y'all going to ride. So Randy and Nathan stopped what they were doing, put everything up, got in the car, went to go pick up the pizza. And while they were out, they decided, well, instead of getting a couple games, because we already had several games. Excuse me. I decided to go ahead and just pick up a couple movies. So, we picked up the movie Maximum Overdrive. Classic Stephen King movie. When they come back, they play games on into the night. And right as Randy's parents were settling in, they decided, hey, we'll go ahead and go watch our movie now. So that they could do so uninterrupted and just kind of enjoy watching the movie and stuff. Well, here's where the story diverges. You see, Randy and Nathan have two different stories for the same night. And so, I'm going to first tell you Randy's story. Then I'm going to follow up with Nathan's story. Now, to this day, both of us will tell you that our part of the story is the truth. And that has never diverged since that day. Never, not once, wondered. So, Randy's tale. As Maximum Overdrive played out, Randy noticed that his friend had dozed off on the floor. After all, it was late night. So, rather than wake his friend up, he decided that once the movie was done, he ended the movie, turned off the TV, went ahead and left Nathan to rest on the floor. He went back, cutting off the lights as he went. Then Randy crawled in on the top bunk, as he always did, and went on to sleep. Now, the next morning, when Randy awakened, he noticed that Nathan was in the bottom bunk beneath him, which was, it'd be expected. It was a normal night. And that was how it happened with me. Nathan, on the other hand, had a complete different story for what happened that night. See, Nathan fell asleep. And he proceeded to tell me, I woke up and you were laying on the floor beside of me. The TV was just white noise, static. The movie had finished out and kicked the tape out. And I got up and I turned off the TV, as he said. Not me. Nathan said he got up and he turned off the TV and he shook me. He shook Randy and he said, Randy. He said Randy's eyes popped open and just looked at him. Don't you think we need to go ahead and go on to bed? He said that Randy said not a word, but just got up, looked at him, and turned and walked down the hallway. Went into the bedroom and hopped on the top bunk. And Nathan followed in there. And he had to clear off the bed. He says, man, aren't you going to do anything else? Aren't you going to help me get this? Not a word. And he cleared off the bed and he laid down. And he said, oh, good night. And he said, Randy, you didn't say anything. He said, the weird thing was I know normally you would talk. You would say something. you would always have something to say. But he said, you just got up and went in and just left me to my... I said, Nathan. Randy looked at him and said, Nathan, that's odd, but right, because it wasn't me. And to this day, Randy and Nathan still tell the two different tales that happened each on their night. And those stories have not changed to this day. And they haven't changed to this day. To this point, we still don't really have a explanation for what happened. Excuse me. Though that is not the only time that there has been reputed of a doppelganger, of me having been seen in the air, in the house or in the neighborhood. There are other stories, but that'll be a story for another time. The next story is, I have to remember what I named it for this, but this story took place on a snowy night many years ago in one of the worst blizzards I remember yet. Yes, we actually have blizzards here in North Carolina, at least we did. This was the blizzard of 87. 86, I'm sorry. But the old house was cold in the winter. And when I mean cold, it was an old house. And it had very drafty rooms. There were quite a few times when we would go to sleep upstairs with a glass of ice water, or a glass of water in sitting by the bed, and wake up and ice be in the glass because it'd just be so cold. Just an old house. Didn't have any kind of... The only form of heating this old house was old wood stove down in the dining room. Now, we used to have one in the living room as well. But after Hurricane Hugo came along, kind of damaged that. But at this time, we still had both. So we still had a big heater, a wood heater in the front living room, and a heater in the dining room. And because of this, when it would get really cold in the winter, especially when it got down, when the temperatures dropped way down into the 20s and the teens, and as was common at that time, even the single digits and the sub-zero digits, Pop would have any of us who were staying upstairs come downstairs closer to the fire, and he would have, because of it being an old house, we would put plastic and curtains and stuff like that up to keep the heat from going upstairs and being pulled out, and keep the heat centralized to warm the house. Made for some really cold times later in my later years, but it was what it was. But this story begins in the blizzard of '86. I remember that blizzard distinctively. It was the blizzard of my 4th grade year. It was the last real snowfall that came through until the blizzard I think was of 91 or 2. The blizzard of the early 90s that hit in our area. Some places would just call it a snowstorm. We called it a blizzard because it actually got more than a couple inches deep. North Carolina for you. Anyway. It all began on a cold winter's night. And actually, as much as I would love to start it that way, it was in truth a cold spring night. For this blizzard was one of those rare blizzards that blew in at the late of March and early of April. It was just before Easter, because we actually lost our Easter vacation that year. But it was a cold night. And while no one was thinking of snow at that point, especially this much snow, it was going to be cold enough that Pop had suggested for my sister, Brigitta, to come down and stay in the same room where I was, so that, because I had a big enough bed that, you know, my tiny butt could stay on one side and she could sleep on the other and not have any issues. However, it was starting off to be a typical night. No one knew that the snow was coming in, especially as it was. As always was my chore, I got in the firewood, stacked it up, and as bedtime rolled around, Pop loaded up the wood stoves and closed down the damper vents so that they wouldn't burn too fast but burn slow and hot, and keep the heat generating through the house and keep it burning through the night until the morning. Now, periodically, someone would get up in the night and check the fireplaces and make sure that the wood was still fed in. Usually it was pretty well, so it was always pretty well tended even then. Well, the night began as most nights, completely uneventful. Brigitta began having dreams. Now, Brigitta's dreams were often, this case was normal. She said, and I remember her telling about how her dream was normal. But then, in the midst of her dream, the scene flashed and showed the window up against which my bed was positioned. Now, my bed was an one of them old metal beds that had the bow design, and it was a deep red that just, and was a double bed. But it was placed against the window because, hey, I love the window, and you know, compared to the two windows, the one that it was up against was the least creepy, but also was the most accommodating for the bed. But Brigitta said the window was dark. And as she was laying there, an arm reached in through the window and had grabbed her and was pulling her and choking her against the rails of the bed. And the dream was so intense that it stirred her from her dream with a start. And she turned around thinking, okay, it's just a dream. It's just a dream. The shadows were around it. I had a single light burning in my room, a real low light. And Brigetta was sitting there going, okay, it was just a dream. She looked around, and as if to comfort herself, to confirm it was just a dream, she turned around and looked out of the window, and what she saw took her breath away. For there, in the new fallen snow, was a set of boot prints. Not boot prints that had walked up to the window, but boot prints that began at the window as if somebody was looking in. Distinctively being cowboy-style boots, she said, and the points showed that they began looking into the window, then turned and walked away. There were no prints leading to the window. And as she saw this, she reached over and tried to wake me up. When she couldn't wake me up normally, she took my head and began bouncing it like a basketball right there on my pillow until I woke up. And when she looked at it, she said, "Do you see it? Do you see him? Do you see him? Do you see them?" Well, by the time I got my eyes to quit bouncing along with the rest of my head, I looked out the window, and there were the boot prints. There were prints, footprints. Well, like I said, boots. But as I stated before, they began at the window, compressed into the snow, not with snow having built around them as if somebody had stood there and it started snowing, but they were on top of the snow, leading away into the night. And she screamed out and got Pop's attention, and Pop come in, looked, and went outside, and there was no sign of anyone there. So we often wonder what was outside that window. Now, there's one of the worst fears that I ever had in that house was actually, especially when I lived on the second floor, was actually looking out the window and expecting to look and see something or someone looking back in at me. But Brigetta had that happen. And it was very unnerving for her to... Not many things unnerved my sister, but that unnerved her. Of course, if you had a snake, or if a snake got loose in the house, that would unnerve Brigetta. But that's another story for another time. Yeah, I think we might have time for one more story. Maybe just one more. Now this one is one of them strange encounters that happened only once in the house. Now, amongst those stories, there have been several that were just one-timers, but they were of things that would be seen elsewhere at different times in different ways. But this was an event that only happened once. It was a weekday afternoon, or a weekday evening, when Gene had either been working late or had gone off to visit some of his friends in the hunting club. And Edna had decided that after a long day, she had the house to herself. She was going to sit and read. Excuse me one moment. So she went, poured herself a glass of tea, picked up the book that she was reading at the time, made her way back into the living room, and sat on the sofa against the windows that led to the front porch. Now, this sofa faced back into the house. So from where she was sitting, she could see the dining room and the kitchen. She could see down the long, dark hallway that led to the back door and would round a corner to go to my room and to the basement door. But also she could see the staircase as it ascended into the darkness of the second floor. And as she began to read and got very deep into what she was reading, she didn't notice that the shadows outside had slowly settled in, going from into the night. And the shadows upstairs had swollen and robbed the view of anything beyond the middle of the steps up. It was at this point, as Edna picked up to take a sip of her tea, noticed something peculiar toward the top of the steps. So she watched and looked. And as she began to sit there, staring at the steps, a couple come waltzing down the steps, dancing, waltzing to a music only they could hear. And they danced as if no one was watching, but as if they were in a party of their own. And they made their way down the steps, and they danced down the stairway to the base, where the landing of the steps, which was a step of its own. They waltzed there, and then they proceeded to step, and they waltzed and danced on the carpet, and then they began to dance as Mom watched, just completely taken by the sight she was seeing. She watched as the couple waltzed down the long, dark hallway. And surely they weren't going to waltz into the back door, but no. They not only waltzed to the back door, but through the back door. And as they went out of sight, Mom got up, and she made her way through the house and was watching through the kitchen window. And it wasn't long till she saw the dancing couple come down the steps of the back porch, and they began to dance and waltz all the way down across the backyard until the shadows of the forest enclosed about them, and they danced on into the forest, out of sight, and never to be seen again. And that's just three small tales from Lacy Road. There are many, many more tales from Lacy Road to come. Not tonight, though. But they will be coming, and there'll be Legends of Lacy Road Volume 1 will be available on Amazon, and I'll announce the date when it will be available. But it's gonna have many stories, much like the ones you've heard tonight. And I'm rewriting them for a better quality of story. While it's not changing the truth in the stories, it's not changing anything, it's adding more detail, more of a story richness to it, so that you could experience these ghost stories as close to as I experienced them, and the people, my friends who have been there as well, have experienced them, including the hand in the window, I'm trying to remember. I still got to remember that one. My mind blanked out about the one with my sister and that I had just told earlier. And also stories like Called by No One, or But It Wasn't Me. Anyway, I'd like to give a few shout outs tonight. I saw some of my fellow Lacy Road group on Instagram Cosplay, and I saw Stacy made stuff on here earlier. Hey guys, I am glad to see 93. Okay, I just now saw that was the Blizzard of 93. And I thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for coming on board. May have to have you come in as a guest, Clint. It would be great to have you on board. You've been a guest on here twice, I think in the last 2 years. And it's been great being here. I would like to thank each and every one of you for tuning in for episode 3, Return to Lacy Road. And I thank you each and every one for I'm getting all kinds of notifications in right now. Thank you each and every one. And be sure to stay tuned in for next week. Around the same time, definitely the same place, by the Fireside, live ghost stories. Thank you for joining me. Have a safe weekend. It's time to start preparing for Halloween. And again, you never know who I'm going to have on as a guest. So be sure to stay in, and not only to see what stories are going to be told, but also to see who's going to be on with me. I thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining by the Fireside. Have a wonderful weekend, a good week. I'm going to see you next time the fire's on. Have a good evening.